Hi everyone, my name is Peter and once again welcome back to my workshop. Today I have something a little bit different because I have to manufacture 25 of these interface plates, 3mm stock and a 3mm component. Now I think this is going to be installed in a chicken farm somewhere, but I am not too sure. It's a simple component with a couple of features. There's a lip on the outside, then I have two pockets. The one is 1.5 millimeters deep, this one is 1 millimeter deep, and then a bunch of holes which is just a standard drill size. But there's also a couple that's non-standard, and for those I'm going to use my 2 millimeter single flute crown notch. Now I know that tool undercuts a little bit, so I'm going to compensate with 0.02 of a millimeter so I can get those couple of holes just perfectly. From a tooling perspective, for the pockets and for my profile cut and my spring cut on the outside, I'm going to use a 6 millimeter single flute. Then for the spring cut on the profile of these pockets and the feature on the outside of the lip, I'm going to use my 3 millimeter single flute. There's also a second operation because there's a couple of flanged bolts that I need to create a chamfer for so they sit flat. So that's going to be operation 2. Now from a work holding perspective, I am going to use my trusty old tape and glue method. This is going to work perfectly for that. I do have a vacuum pump and this job does lend itself to be vacuum held. The problem is I don't have it set up, and to do it now is going to take longer than just to use tape and glue. If I had to manufacture 150 components, I think I would have spent the time to get my vacuum setup done. Then you might see I have 6 different pieces of stock, and you might ask why. I've seen too many times the T6 being delivered 3 millimeter to me and it's bowed or bent. When that is cut, when the stock is cut at the supplier and the stress, the aluminium is under, it bows, and by the time it reaches me, the stock is unusable and I can't give bent components to my customer. It does create extra work for me, but in that I also see the benefit. Let's say there is a 2 millimeter difference in my spoiler fingers from the front to the rear. Because I have a G54 to G59 setup, what I'm going to do is I'm going to Z each and every one of these to make sure that they are Z perfect for the exact location where I'm going to machine them. I'm going to mark the spots they are at. So for my second batch, I have 2 batches to do. So for my second batch, I'll just mount them at exactly the same location, and I know I don't have to do any offsets again because the tape and glue Z offset heights is extremely reliable. Apart from that, I'm going to make a time-lapse video of this whole process. I will see you at the end where I'll show you the end product and just to discuss with you if there was anything worth mentionable. So I'll see you at the end.
Miles to go. To go. Not the end. Just the road.
I think wow is just about as much as I can utter right now. I was not planning on making this outro portion because it was only supposed to be a time lapse and then just a bit of footage, me machining these components, or simple components, and that was supposed to be it. And oh boy, was I wrong. You know, you sometimes do that job and it feels as if it really needs its own reality TV spot. That's about how I felt doing this job. Now, and I'm mentioning this for a specific reason. In the intro, I mentioned two things. One is that I received T6 stock 3mm in the past from my supplier that was bent and buckled. The second thing I mentioned is that I didn't have time to do a vacuum fixture to try something else to hold the stock down. So I grabbed this piece of a 3mm T6 from my shelf, and you can see how bent it is. Now this is an old piece I had and it's quite small, but just in this small little area, look at the bend. This one is a little bit bent in that direction, but not too much. I have in the past flipped this stock like this around, glued them down, and I was able to machine them, but it's really it's dicing of a disaster. And I mean, you would not be giving anything to your customer that's machined from a piece of stock like this. I also don't think there is a vacuum system that will hold this down. It's extremely difficult to bend, and it's a spring action, so it just goes back to where it started. So in my view, that's the kind of stock I would do nothing with. It's just kind of a souvenir. Now, rolling back to, and that was important, rolling back to this job, I have two piles. The one is the yes pile, and the other pile is the oh what pile. And you know, this job was going so well. I machined the features, the lip on the outside, these pockets, it looked so nice. And then I got to where I had to do the profile spring cuts on these pockets and the other little things where I needed to use a 3mm tool. And I immediately noticed it is leaving a lip. I thought, well, the first thing that crossed my mind is tool offsets, but I probed all my tools at the same time, and I know that I checked all my tools at the bottom, so the tools were clean. So that can't be it. I double checked my cam quickly, my CAD cam, and no, it's all at the same height. And as a matter of fact, I left for my 3mm tool, I left 0.04 of a millimeter, so it doesn't, if they, by any chance, it doesn't cut back into my floor finish. So I left it there because I knew that these two features are not hypercritical, and I can just spring cut them later with a 6mm tool again to get them flat. So it was only when I started drilling these holes, and I was standing over there and I could see the reflection as it was drilling, and I could see the stock bowing down as the drill was coming down into the stock. And then I knew what happened is the stock bowed, buckled. So the stock is bent. The only thing I can think that happened is when I machined these two features, is that the internal stresses and the stock this aluminium just bent. It's as simple as that. That's what I like about 3mm C250 or tooling plate, is the fact that it's stable. But I don't think the amount you'll spend more for that stock, you know, is feasible for this specific job. I think that's just out of the question. So, you know, you kind of have to do with what you have. Unfortunately, then I wasn't in a headspace to make any more videos, just trying to fix this issue. I machined the flange bolts heads at the back. It was actually very interesting. I used my 12mm 45-degree chamfer end mill, and I just dwelled at the bottom of the hole for half a second so it cleans up the hole properly. So that turned out well, and I tapped a couple of holes, as tapped here, M2, M3 and M4, and this job turned out at the end, even after all the issues, I think these 25, I actually made, I think, one extra for the customer, turned out well. I most certainly learned something. You know, I guess what I've learned, and I've seen so many times in my life, is that one job which you think is going to be a quickie, it's going to be easy, you're going to have a video out, it's going to be all dandy. It's when it bites you in the back, and that's when you look and say, well, I can have a reality TV show making these components. Now the question is, would anything have worked? Well, I don't think so, not for these components. I don't think any other work holding method would have worked. The tape and glue, I didn't use liquid or a lubricant, so that was not the issue. I've been using tape and glue for a long time. I know it's extremely dependable, but the amount this is bent, anything would give. There's just no way of bending that back. Anything would have given. It is just the turn of the dice. So I'm sorry for the waffle. I don't know if you've learned anything. I certainly have, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.